Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome back to Anime King 3. And I'm back with part 2 of What If Naruto was locked away by the Otsutsuki god. Remember to get this one too. 100 like as usual. Share this to all of your friends on your social media platform. And also, guys, don't forget to go ahead and check out the other channels if you're new. Yes, I indeed have 3 more channels that I post what if on every single day for you guys to enjoy. So don't forget to go ahead, check them out, and yeah, enjoy. All the links will be down in the description. And don't forget to turn on the bell notification so you can see when I post, because I do post a hell of a lot. So without further ado, or wasting any more time, how about we jump right into this brand new episode? Let us begin now, guys. So, to do a bit of a recap from the last part that we left off, Naruto Uzumaki was on a very destroyed planet, as he was in a battered, weakened state, a poorly beaten one. He was standing alone. All of his friends, all those who fought alongside him, was now taken away, struck down by the very man that he was facing now. However, said man was very upset, and the reason was simple. Naruto would not give up. He believed that he broke Naruto, that he took everything away from him, and that he should bow and submit. However, it didn't matter what he did, or how hard he was trying. It didn't matter. What he did, Naruto was just not giving up, and this angered him. Being a person that usually gets whatever he wants, as he saw himself as a benevolent being, a god, and yet he could not make a simple person like this pathetic, off-brand human give up. It angered him in ways that he never thought he would ever be angry in, as he was bloody furious, gazing towards Naruto with such rage. However, he was done, as he figured that he wasted enough time. He was just going to end this once and for all, and that meant ending Naruto, as he pulled out his most deadliest technique to make sure that he wiped him off the face of the planet. However, in that very moment, a person that looked humanoid but their skin was extremely red proceeded to charge up their technique to send Naruto away, as this would involve them sending him towards another space. However, the two techniques clashed together, and the ending result was Naruto being sent through a wormhole. Yes, a literal powerful wormhole that sucked him inside and pulled him away. We then skip towards a young Naruto Uzumaki. This seemed to be a different time, as he was fighting Haku on the bridge. Sasuke had just fallen, as he was infused by the Fox Chakra. Before he could go on a rampage though, his mind was attacked by the other Naruto that merged with him. He was shocked, as they were able to talk and he learned who he was. He couldn't believe who he was looking at or what he was even finding out. However, just like why the Otsutsuki that beat him mercilessly hated him so much, even facing dangerous threats, Naruto refused to give up. Yes, he refused to submit. Yes, he refused to bow and give up. So despite the challenges ahead, he was going to fight, as his future self rested a hand on his head, and it happened in that very moment. When Naruto came to, he was just standing there, as Haku was confused, as all that power seemed to have just vanished away, as he tried to understand what was going on. As he quickly disabled Haku with just his hands, paralyzing Haku where he stood. Naruto then made his way to where Gato and the others were arriving. Suddenly he infused himself with the fox chakra as he went on a rampage. He went on a homicidal rampage and slaughtered every single goon. Kakashi was forced to knock Sakura and Sasuke out so they would not witness the sight, as Zabuza took Haku and leave, fearing what would happen if they did stay. Kakashi was panicking, believing that Naruto had lost all sense of control, but the next moment Naruto returned back to normal, like it was absolutely nothing, confusing and surprising Kakashi. As the rest of the time spent at the Land of Wave seemed to be going well, as Naruto earlier inspired words had caused Iniri to gather all the people, and here they were, as they were here to fight. Returning back to the village, as the members of Team 7 noticed that Naruto was acting strange. Something just wasn't right, as they could not explain it. Kakashi told him that he's been through a lot, so it's best if they give him a break, as Sakura decided to lay off. Returning back to the village, Naruto knew that he had to play the part, saying that he believed that he was a monster, but they proceeded to tell him that he was not. Hiruzen and Kakashi. However, upon returning home, everything returned back towards him like a tidal wave. He remembered everything. His life was normal up to when Jiraiya passed away and he defeated Pain. It was then that he learned. As he started to focus on the things Jiraiya left behind for him, Fuinjutsu, he started to focus on those. However, things took a really bad turn, as he ended up transporting himself far away. That is where he met Omi, the one that was able to teleport him in the future. As Naruto had saved Omi's life, but in the process he had killed the Otsutsuki, and the Otsutsuki tried to merge with him. However, the portal that Naruto had opened up messed with space and time, and Naruto will came out and he won, transforming him into a Otsutsuki. It took him some time to get back to his planet when Omi finally was able to send him there, hoping that Naruto would never have to face the trouble of the Otsutsukis. With his newfound strength, Naruto was able to dominate most of the threat in the war that took place. As everything went so well, they defeated Madara. Everything went wonderful. Kaguya was defeated. She was sealed once again. Everything was just okay. Until a few years passed when their battle with Tenori happened. That is when he arrived, Nobushiki Otsutsuki. He had been watching Naruto for some time now, as he told him to kneel, but Naruto refused. In the process, Naruto watched everyone that he loved killed right in front of his eyes. It truly and utterly broke him, yes. It destroyed him. It left him a jumbling mess, unable to even fathom anything anymore. As he was taken, his home was destroyed. All life ceased to exist. What Naruto thought was months was actually years. Nobushiki wouldn't allow him to die, as he wanted to break Naruto's spirit. However, he was finally rescued by someone that he ended up falling for. She was a part of the resistance, as she was with Omi. Omi was surprised to see Naruto. However, he was so different, as he could see the dead look in Naruto's eyes. As they came together, stopping many Otsutsukis, many years passed as Naruto's age was no longer being affected, as he fell for the woman that saved his life. However, Nobushiki caught them on a remote planet, and that is when the battle ensued, and he watched everyone that he loved, even his unborn child, died right in front of his eyes. So with that, Omi had sent him away, and in the process he was now here, as Naruto was very pissed off. His rage was not even something could be described, as he vowed to destroy every single one of them. In order to do what he had to do to save everyone, he's gonna have to become a monster. and he intends to do whatever it takes. So yeah guys, basically let's pull it off. You guys can switch across the play sector of yourself. So let's begin this new episode. Let's begin now guys. We begin this new episode on top of the Hokage's monument. Standing there, gazing out towards the village, was Naruto. As his gaze, every now and again he could see what the village had been turned into. Before his vision flashed back to normal, he was no longer wearing the orange jumpsuit. His clothing was completely different. Dressed in simple black pants, his sandals on his feet. He was wearing a grey and black shirt that could open at the front. The sleeves were grey, the rest of it was black. Underneath he was wearing a white shirt that was being exposed as a wing. Blue, his open shirt. His cold eyes focused down on the village. It's been 5 months and 2 weeks since he was able to see the future, knowing what was going to happen, knowing what was going to come. The first thing that he did after returning was paid a visit to the nine-tailed fox. Flashback. Kurama had felt the strange disturbance. However, the fox wasn't able to witness or see what Naruto see when he spoke to that future version of himself, nor did he have the memories of what Naruto now knew. To the fox understanding, this was the first time that they were actually meeting. As Naruto stepped down the halls, he stood in front of the cage where the nine-tail resides. The beast was cloaked by its own malice. Two red eyes opened in the darkness. It tried to scare him, but Naruto was completely unfazed. He wasn't bothered one bit. He lifted his shirt up as he went through a rather long, serious, complex set of hand signs. Once he was finished with the 61 hand signs, he plunged his hand in his stomach. And what followed was truly shocking. The seal, it burned off. Yes, it seems like a large dose of the fox power was pulled out of it the moment Naruto slammed his hand on his stomach. And the moment that happened, it hit the seal with such force that it burned off. The Nine-Tails was shocked, immediately revealing his true form. This was his opportunity, but Naruto turned his hand. That is when it happened. The gates, they shatter like glass. The beast was shocked as it was now free, confusion written all over its face. How was this boy able to break a complex seal like this one? This seal was empowered by the Shinigami itself. This made absolutely no sense. However, he saw his freedom on the line and he was about to take it. To his shock, however, when he tried to leave the premise of the gate, he slammed into an invisible barrier. In the outside world, Naruto was seated in one of the many forests. His shirt was off, showing a rather large array of complex seals that were tattooed all over his body, as they all ran towards a seal that was glowing on his stomach, preventing the fox from leaving. The broken bars of the cell suddenly rose up. The Nine-Tails was shocked completely as the bars started to come together like an interlocking chain. Before the beast could even say a word, it wrapped around his mouth. It then wrapped around every single one of his tails. The beast started through and threw himself around trying to escape, but they slammed into the ground with such a force that he could not even budge. Naruto slowly approached, his 5 fingertips glowing. Upon reaching the Nine-Tails, Naruto placed a hand on his head. For a moment, his eyes showed compassion instead of the dead cold look in his eyes. The next moment though, he ripped something out of the fox. It was a fox, but made of pure chakra. not seem as solidified as he was in the mindscape. Naruto then proceeded to release it as a chakra simply implode upon itself. The Ninetales' eyes started slowly shut down, his body becoming weaker and weaker and weaker. That is when all the iron bars wrapped around him as they come together as a tightly packed ball, trapping the beast inside as he fell asleep. Upon arriving towards the black ball, Naruto sped through another chain of hand sign. In the outside world, all of the glowing seals that were on his body started to converge around the seal that was disappearing off his stomach. Naruto then slammed his hand on the glowing iron ball in the mindscape as a new seal appeared on top of it, sealing the fox inside and trapping him away. What he did might seem incredibly horrible and harsh, but it was something that he had to do. He knew full well by now that having Kurama inside of him, or anywhere close to him, and facing a being like that was a very stupid idea. Kurama's mind and chakra was now inaccessible to anyone, even Nobushiki. The only way to get him was to make Naruto draw his final breath, and this time, that was not going to happen. There was a method to his madness, as he knew what he was doing. The seal was rather easy to break apart. He has lived for a very long time. Naruto has created seals that no one on this planet could even ever dream of. He created thousands upon thousands of seals that could do a shocking amount of things. Breaking the Death Reaper seal apart was pretty easy to do. Having studied it inside and out, he knew every single detail about it, no longer needing a key. Speaking of key, Naruto looked down before releasing a breath as the space in front of him started to glow. Two people appearing out of nowhere. They were confused on what was going on. Minato? A beautiful redhead spoke up. Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage of the village, glanced up. Kushina? He said with a shocked look written all over his face. How is this? What's going... They both saw their son. Kushina took a step forward, her hands shaking. Naruto? Is that you? Yes, it's me, Mom. She ran towards him as she enveloped her baby boy in a hug. She held on to him as Minato made his way over, as he noticed the changes and noticing the missing fox. What's going on? Did the seal fail? What happened? You're probably the only two that I can trust with this, Naruto said, as he gazed into their eyes. Both of them were stunned as they took a step back. The memories that he had flooded into their mind. Their bodies able to withstand the shock because they were just chakra. The both of them had a mortified look on their face. Kushina started to cry. Her tears was because of Naruto. As she saw it, the hellish screams, the torture. Nobushiki tortured Naruto for years upon years. Thousands of years. He was put through hell, beaten, tortured, beaten, having his mind literally destroyed and rebuilt. However, his will never broke. Throughout all of that, he refused to give up, despite the physical and mental pain. Kushina had to place a hand over her mouth as she cried, looking towards Naruto. Minato was pure shock, never expecting there to be so much beyond the stars, and his son had been the main targeting point and put through hell. Minato stepped forward. I can't even imagine to understand what you have gone through, he said. I don't even know what to say. This was a first for him. He expected to see his son, to give him some good advice, for him to carry on. It's okay, said Naruto. No, it's not, said Kushina. She stepped towards him. It's not okay. What you've been through. No normal human, no one should ever go through like that. But you had to live and suffer through that for thousands upon thousands of years. She cried as she held on to him, as Naruto was unable to cry. The tears just wouldn't come, as he wasn't able to. However, his body was reacting, shaking, frustration and sadness, as Minato stepped forward and enveloped the both of them, Naruto's smaller form making it much more easier. In the flashback, he had spoken to his parents. They tried to help him as much as they could, to encourage him that he could do what he was setting out to do. They understood. They saw what he's been through. They knew their words would not change his mind. It didn't matter if they were not here though. The real ones were not here anymore. They will always be here for him, watching over and loving him. Even after all of that, the tears still would not come, as they held him until their chakra went away. He already knew what he needed to know. So here he was now, as he stood on top of the monument. The power that he once has, it seems it would never truly return, at how strong he was. However, he realized that most of his strength had slowly been seeping back. Maybe that power will return, but it will take a while. Maybe this body was still going through a transition phase. But even with all that power, he still would not win. He needed more. He needed more power. After all, the monster that he's going up against can literally mess with time itself. And he needed to be stronger than that. Far, far, far stronger. However, in order to do that, he was going to have to leave his home. Yes, but that was down in the future. He had to fix his home first before leaving it. But upon leaving his home, everyone that he knew, all of them, they will see him as a monster. But that amount of sacrifice meant nothing for him. He was the only one that knew what will truly happen if that sacrifice is not made. Time skip. As Naruto was making his way, Kakashi had called all of them for a team meeting. It was the Chunin exams. Things were heading down the right path that he wanted them to go down. "Hey, Naruto!" A voice called out to him as he turned to see Sakura running up towards him with a smile on her face. "Head into the meeting spot," she said. "Yeah," he said. "I'll walk with you," she said. As the both of them were walking side by side, Sakura was worried. It's been months since they came back from the wave mission. Kakashi said the mission was difficult on Naruto, and it had changed him. She thought that he would bounce back to normal after a few days, but everything about him has changed. At first she thought he was doing this just to act like he was Sasuke or better than Sasuke, but it was a look in his eyes. The Naruto that she knew always had this happy-go-lucky look in his eyes, but this one, it was like his eyes were void of all emotion. It was like nothing around interest or bother him anymore. It was like he was empty, and it really bothered her. If the ninja life could snuff out the light that Naruto once had, how was anyone else supposed to cope? As she gazed towards him from the corner of her eye, even his clothing had taken a drastic turn as well. Everything seemed so gloomy and dark now. That is when they heard something. Turning, Sakura saw the commotion as Naruto walked past her, heading right towards it. As she followed behind him, that is when the two kids saw Naruto running up towards him, telling him what happened. Naruto stepped forward as Konohamaru saw him. "You're in for it now. Boss is gonna mess you up," he shouted. "Huh? You mean this, little pipsqueak?" Kankuro said as he scoffed. "Tuh, you Konoha people are surely cocky, but you should know." Kankuro paused as he finally took a good look at Naruto. More importantly, he gazed at his eyes. Kankuro felt something wash over him as his grip loosened as Konohamaru fell to the ground. "What's wrong?" Temari said, trying to understand. As Kankuro backed away, Naruto was not doing anything, nothing at all. However, his dead eyes that had accumulated over the years had been enough to put many in a state of shock and fear by just a single glance, and now Kankuro was witnessing that. As Naruto did not intend on trying to forge anything with much people, it would just make it harder for them, not him. Never for him. "What's going on here?" Sasuke said, standing on the tree. "Another one," Temari said, still wondering why Kankuro was freaking out like that. "Kankuro." Sasuke froze as he blinked in surprise. What the hell? He didn't even sense him. Appearing in a sand sunshine was Gaara. "Are you causing trouble for our village?" "No." Naruto was the one that spoke. "That was me." Gaara immediately took notice of Naruto's eyes, and they were just like his. Naruto stepped towards Gaara. As he stopped, a distance, leaving space between them. "You're a Jinchuriki, just like me." Gaara narrowed his gaze in surprise, a bit of confusion, as Naruto was talking extremely low. No one else could hear him. "I know that I can't even imagine to understand the pain that you've been through," Naruto said, which was a dramatic lowballing of what actual pain was. However, the life of a Jinchuriki is never an easy one. "For none of us," said Naruto. "I know you might think that living by yourself, fighting for yourself is the right way to go. But I can assure you that, in the long run, it will never be the solution. There will only be pain, death, and chaos." For the first time in a long while, Gaara was actually listening to someone, especially someone his own age, as he looked at Naruto. "You're just like me then," he said. "You understand the pain that this life can bring. How could you say that I won't have to fight for myself? If you understand my pain." "I never said I did," said Naruto. "But all Jinchuriki has had a rather terrible life." "But you're not alone," said Naruto. "There is always time to turn back, as long as you don't let it consume you." Well, Naruto stepped alongside Gaara. "Are you guys coming?" he said, looking over his shoulder. As he started to walk, Gaara stood there. What was that?" Temari said. Gaara disappeared in the sand sunshine, simply vanishing. His mind was conflicted and confused, and he didn't like that. He didn't like it one bit. "What the hell is going on?" Temari said, confused, as she looked down towards Kankuro, who finally seemed to be regaining his breath and control over his bodily function. "What the hell was that? Why did you just shut down like that? Didn't you see it? His eyes. It must be some sort of genjutsu. Something. Didn't you feel it?" he asked, looking at her. "There was nothing," she said to him. But Kankuro was confused, trying to understand what the hell happened to him. Time skip. The Forest of Death. Events played out just like they did in his time. As Naruto was now in the Forest of Death, he decided to step away from his teammates, saying that he had to take a leak. Hearing a hissing sound, as the massive snake rose up, its intention was clear: to swallow him. It came down with a fury. However, all it did was tear the ground and trees apart, as Naruto was suspended in mid-air, his feet pointing upward, his head looking down slightly at the beast. He twisted mid-air before coming down, going through 3 hand signs. As he landed on top of the snake's head, the moment he rested his hand on top of its head, a violent surge of wind energy was released from his palm. The beast immediately poofed away as Naruto landed, looking at his hands with a clear sign of disappointment. His body was not giving him the results that he needed. He did not want to use that amount of chakra just a moment ago. A simple wind attack would have done. He was able to refine his wind ability over the years to the most perfect degree. However, this body was still jumbling things up. He needed more time, he told himself. Naruto then made his way towards the location. Orochimaru of the Sannin had just finished sinking his fangs into Sasuke's neck as the young Uchiha collapsed to the ground. Tears, painful tears in his eyes. The pain was almost unbearable, so much so that he passed out. Sakura threw a kunai toward the Sannin, but he simply deflected as he looked towards her with an amusing smile. What did you do to him?" she shouted. "I simply gave Sasuke-kun a gift," Orochimaru said with a smile, as he started to back away, talking to himself, a gift that he will soon desire more than life itself. Orochimaru felt a weird sensation as he looked up. The Sannin was shocked. Standing there was the nine-tailed host. He was standing on one of the high branches, simply looking down. The Sannin was surprised. Was he able to discard of his summoning? Even if he was able to do that, why was he just standing there? Did he realize the difference between their strength and decided not to intervene? Was he that much of a coward? No. From what he heard, the child was one to throw himself head first into oncoming attacks like an idiot. Kabuto had given him a rundown of Sasuke teammates. The girl was useless. However, the Jinchuriki was. Well, he could be problem in the future, but right now he was just an annoying child. But him standing there. However, his eyes did not make sense to Orochimaru as he sunk into the tree and vanished away. As for Sakura, she was panicking, looking around as she couldn't see Naruto anywhere and Sasuke was in a bad condition. That was when she heard something. She picked herself up ready to fight, however, there he was. She felt so happy. "Naruto, you're back," she said. "It's alright," he said to her. "What happened?" She quickly started to tell him everything. "I know Sasuke's like that." "Let's get him somewhere safe," said Naruto. She nodded. Time skip. It was nighttime as they were seated in a broken tree. As the both of them were just sitting down there, the moonlight was making excellent light for them. Sakura was pretty nervous. She tried to help Sasuke with her limited knowledge of medical ninjutsu as she placed a wet rag on his head. However, her nervousness came from Naruto. He was so silent. She figured that she would talk to him about it to see if she could help him. Naruto," she said. "Yeah," he said. He was just gazing out through a broken part of the branch. "Sensei told us that you went through a lot at Land of Wave. Are you alright?" she asks. "Yeah, I'm just fine." "But you don't seem fine," she said to him. "I mean, you're not acting like yourself." "Yeah, I suppose you're right. However, sometimes people are put in situations where they're forced to change in order to meet certain expectations. And I guess the Land of Wave was a changing point for me." Sakura was unsure what to say about that, as Naruto spoke with a different tone, like he was someone that was grown up and understood life. "Hey, how about you get some sleep? You've been through a lot today. I'll watch over you and Sasuke." "Are you sure?" she said, not wanting to put him out. She could force herself to stay up. "Yeah, I'm sure," said Naruto. "I'll be just fine. I'm full of energy," he said. Usually he would say that with a smile, but that is when she realized, from he returned, he had not smiled, not even once. She did not know when she passed out. As her body finally claimed sleep, she was exhausted. Once she was safely asleep, Naruto stepped out. As he went through hand sign before, resting his hand on top of the broken branch. Immediately it started to change, turning into a pile of leaf, a large gathering amount, like a standard part of the forest. That is when Naruto started to walk. As he was doing that, the sound ninjas who were watching them was wondering what he was doing. "Where do you think he's going?" Kin asked. "I have no idea," said Zaku. That is when he blinked out of reality. One moment he was there, the next he seemed to just vanish, shocking them, as they were unable to understand what the hell was going on. They looked around. Where the hell did he go? That is when those two felt it. A hand resting on his shoulder. "Shh, don't move." All three of them froze. "I can end your life without even blinking. It's in your best interest that you don't move a single muscle." Cold sweat started to gather on their face as they felt fear coursing through their spine. "I know what you're here to do. However, if you would like to still draw breath, I suggest you turn and leave immediately. I'll give you 5 seconds. Naruto said, backing away. Realizing that the danger had been clear, Zaku, the stubborn one, got to his feet. "Die," he said, as he held his hand out. However, he didn't get the opportunity. Naruto was not 5 feet away from him. He was directly in front of him. Zaku had no understanding of what just happened. What he did understand though was pain, as Naruto grabbed his hand. Naruto snapped it by applying enough force to break it. He then slammed his hand into Zaku's chin, snapping his mouth upwards, allowing him to bite his own tongue. He grabbed him by the face and slammed him into the tree. Kin fired several senbons with bell attached to them around Naruto. However, Naruto spun around. He was so fast. As he spun, he launched a kunai right towards her. Kin thought that she was going to die, but all it did was slice her cheek. As for Dosu, as he raised his gauntlet arms, he intended to attack. However, Naruto was behind him, grabbing both of his hands, pinning them behind him as he stepped into his back. Dosu's head smashed into the ground hard as Naruto stomped into him, causing him further pain. "I told you to be quiet." Naruto drove his leg down as Dosu stifled a scream, knowing that it would only result in more pain. Kin was trembling as her life was almost ended, as she knew that death was coming in this thing, but she just nearly died, and the thought of that was terrifying. Naruto released Dosu, who was in agony on the ground. Dosu looked up, intending to glare, but the look in Naruto's eyes made him shrink in on himself, as he had a look of absolute terror in his eyes. As he gazed at Naruto, this time, "You only have 3 seconds. 1. Dosu quickly got up, still in agony. 2. He grabbed Zaku as he rushed towards Kin, who was still in a shocked state. "Move!" he shouted at her, grabbing her arms. 3, said Naruto, as he was gone with his teammates. As Naruto was holding their scroll in his hand, he made his way back to camp, arriving as he looked down towards Sasuke. The next morning, Sakura was awoken by a violent sensation, as the entire area was filled with an ominous chakra. Sasuke had woken up. As Sakura watched as he was exiting, he didn't even look at her. Naruto was sitting outside. Sasuke seemed to be in his own head as Sakura ran after him. The next moment though, Sasuke suddenly jerked as a purple mist vanished and his eyes clear up. He stood there confused. Sakura grabbed onto him, holding him, worried that Orochimaru's influence was affecting him. "What's going on?" Sasuke said as Naruto walked up to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. None of them noticing that another seal was on Sasuke. On his left shoulder as it disappeared. The curse mark was still there though. "You were in a real bad condition. She's just happy to see that you're awake," Naruto said, looking at him. "Oh," Sasuke said. Every time he seen Naruto now, Sasuke didn't know what happened to him, as Sasuke had a real heart-to-heart with Naruto when he thought that he was going to die on the bridge. However, Naruto had changed more than he expected. He was like a completely different person. Sasuke could not remember the last time that he called him a dope. Time skip. Despite the curse mark, Sasuke demolished his opponent as they were now in the preliminary exams. Sasuke was immediately taken by Kakashi as Naruto stood there, watching the other fights take place. However, his eyes was not really looking at anything. Hiruzen Sarutobi glanced over towards Naruto, and the man was worried. Yes, things had taken a more drastic turn than he thought. He thought that Naruto would be back to his old cheery self in just a couple of days, but that was not what was happening at all. It was like all the life had been drained out of him. His face was set in a grim expression, and Kakashi did inform him that he had been training a lot lately, and mostly just focusing on that. Hiruzen was worried though, as he wondered if he should give him a session with Inoichi to try and help him through what he went through. His name was finally called as Naruto made his way down there, followed by Kiba Inuzaka. Kiba was smirking. "Of all the people I get, Naruto is my opponent. Well, this is going to be a piece of cake," he said. Kiba expected a retort. However, nothing came from him. They had asked about his hair when they saw him during the first test. He did not really give them a proper response on it. "So, gonna tell us now what happened to your hair?" Kiba said. As Naruto's hair was mostly white, there was still blonde streaks in it, but it was mostly white. That is when Kakashi finally arrived, as he returned back to where he was standing. "Oh, one of my cute little Jennings is up. Sorry Kakashi, but this is not gonna go the way that you think." Naruto stands absolutely no chance against Kiba. "You think so?" he said, looking towards Kunai. "I know so," she said to him. Hinata Hyuga, who was standing there, knew that something was wrong. Out of everyone else, she believed that she knew Naruto even more than everyone else. And yet, the person down there was not her Naruto. Whoever he was, he might look and sound like him, but that was not her Naruto. It was his eyes. While his hair had taken a drastic change for reasons that he would not give out, his eyes were not the same. It was a different person completely, she thought. As Kunai clearly believed that Kiba had this one in the bag. "Alright Naruto, I'm gonna take it easy on you, to not rough you up so badly." "Hey, did you hear me?" Kiba asked. Naruto had not said even one word, as the proctor asked them if they were ready. The moment he said begin, Naruto charged forward. Kiba prepared himself, as Naruto threw a punch. Expecting to deflect it with ease, Kiba was startled when his hand vibrated, the force of the punch rattling his bones. Naruto knocked away his other hand before he buried his fist in Kiba's gut. Kiba keeled over Naruto's fist. Akamaru jumped as Naruto backhanded the dog. Everyone was shocked by that display. Akamaru crashed hard on the ground. Naruto grabbed Kiba by his hair and lifted him up off his other hand. Before he released him and spun, he slammed his heel across Kiba's face. He followed it up by grabbing Kiba's leg and swinging as he launched him towards the wall. Kiba slammed into said wall as Naruto arrived and grabbed his right hand and his left and slammed it above him, pinning him there. He grasped his fist with all of his might as he pulled it back. Give up. That was all he said as Kiba opened his mouth. Boom! Naruto's fist cracked and destroyed the wall, shocking everyone by his strength. However, Kiba had long since passed out from the brutal hits that Naruto had scored. Those hits weren't normal. They were triggered and target, especially the spinning kick, as Kiba was knocked out cold. Naruto pulled his fist back as he brushed off the dust. Kiba collapsed down to the ground, Akamaru rushing over towards his master. As Naruto calmly made his way up the stairs, he paused in front of Gaara and his people. He looked at Gaara before his gaze turned towards his sensei Baki, as Naruto's eyes seemed to analyze the man for a moment before he returned back to his team. Sakura did not say anything to how shocked she was. Kakashi was currently going through the same thing, as Hiruzen was baffled. Every single genin that knew Naruto was truly surprised to what they just witnessed. The hair and the clothing was different, but now the personality was also completely different as well. Time skip. Kakashi went off to train Sasuke as he got someone to help Naruto, but Hiruzen stopped that because Jiraiya arrived. Hiruzen informed him of what happened with the 9 tails on the bridge, as he wanted Jiraiya to help the kid out. That is why he told him where to go to meet his new trainer at the hot springs, yes. As we find Naruto arriving there, his eyes showed a glimpse of emotion as he looked towards the man, remembering the day that he died. The sannin acted like he wasn't interested at first, until Naruto and him started to talk, which took a lot. Well, the man always had been rather self-involved. The last time they met, for the first time, he had to show him the sexy jutsu in order to get him to train him. But now, he was here. Naruto figured that he was here under the Hokage words because of his recent attitude. That was good. They started to see that he was developing problems, as Jiraiya promised that he would teach him something awesome. Naruto already knew what that was. It was a summoning jutsu. It played right in his plan that he had cooking up. Time skip. Kabuto, Yakuji, and Baki of the Sand was meeting up to speak about the invasion. Baki was relaying information back to his Kazekage, who he thought was A-OK. But that was the major down point of that. It seems like they had a spy though. Kabuto quickly made his way off, leaving Baki to take care of the spy, which was none other than Hayate, as Boatman was about to throw down, when suddenly Hayate felt something behind him, turning at the unexpected guess with his blade. Hayate collapsed down to the ground, like his strings had been cut. However, he wasn't dead though. A clone of the new player arrived and picked Hayate up. Standing there was a man as tall as Baki. He had dark hair. He was wearing a mask that hid his features, dressed in all dark, as he was standing there rather nonchalant. Baki could tell that he was staring at him though. Strangely enough, the mask did not possess any eye holes at all. "Who are you?" said Baki. The person did not talk, as they started to run right at him. They traded blows, taijutsu. Baki was a very powerful sand ninja, as he was able to fend off his attacker. He then blew powder out of his mouth, using it as a distraction. With that, he pulled out his ultimate technique, a blade made purely from wind. which he claimed to be very unstoppable. He brought it down as he was going to slice right through his opponent. However, despite the smoke, whoever this guy was, he held out his hand as Baki noticed the strange pattern in his palm, like a ceiling matrix. Baki watched as his technique shattered like glass. Confusion marred his face, but it wasn't going to be confusion for too long, as the individual palm struck in his stomach, before striking right above his abdomen, then striking below that. Baki felt a freezing sensation as his body froze upon him, as he felt cold as well. It was like his blood had paused circulation for a moment, blocking his mind out as he collapsed, unmoving on the ground. The person then reached down and picked him up, along with the scroll that was given to him by Kabuto to hand over to his Kazekage. Time skip. Baki was just regaining consciousness, as he found himself unable to move anything but his head. What's going on? Be quiet. Baki looked over as he saw the person that knocked him out standing there casually. He couldn't believe him of all person was that easily defeated. However, he was just so startled by watching his most deadly attack destroyed like it was nothing, and he let his guard down for that split moment, and this enemy capitalized on that. Damn him. Who are you? What do you want? Baki said. Well, what I want is for you and your village not to lose countless of your men for no reason. What are you talking about? I know about the invasion plan. If you try to tell me otherwise, I'll cut one of your fingers off. So don't waste my time with any garbage lies, and lie again, and it'll get much worse. Do we understand each other? Baki did not respond. However, the person turned and threw a small dagger that sliced right through its cheek, causing blood to leak down. I said, do we understand each other? However, Baki refused to open his mouth. He had to stay loyal to his village, he told himself. That was his problem though. As the person reached and pulled out a blade, the blade had a very short handle. However, there was no blade actually there. It was just a handle. He placed it in front of Baki, without saying a word as he put it at his shoulder. Suddenly, with a small infusion of his chakra, a blade made purely from the chakra emerged. It was red. When it ripped through Baki's shoulder, there was a sizzling sound as it started to cook his flesh. Baki screamed out as the person rested his hand on Baki's head, activating a silencing seal. He put the blade there for a good 10 minutes. He did not move. He did not spoke. Baki was in agony as it felt like it was coursing through his entire body. He could not move his body, but he could feel the pain and it was agonizing. After 10 minutes, Baki was a mess, having peed and even thrown up. Yes, right on himself. He was a mess. His hair disheveled, his body racked with agony. First of all, you should know that your Kazekage is dead. What? Baki said, struggling to talk. His mouth felt so dry. Orochimaru of the Sannin killed him because he refused to continue with the plans. Now, here is what is going to happen and what you're going to do. And the next time you decide to keep your mouth shut when I tell you to speak, the pain will be 10 times worse. Now, let us have a proper conversation, the person said. Time skip. Baki returned back to his village with a shocking revelation. As he returned home, he shouldered a bandage under his clothing. As he went to the Kazekage's study, who was wearing a veil, he handed him the scroll and told him what happened and that everything was fine. Yes, as Baki stood there, now realizing, as his mind had been open to what their true situation really was. Back at Konoha, Hayate returned home. He was rather confused. Waiting for him was Yujeo Otsutsuki. What's wrong? She said. I can't remember how I got here. She turned towards him confused. What do you mean by that? I remember taking a stroll and then I'm not sure. He said rather confused, not understanding how he got here. As she beckoned him inside so they could find out what the hell was going on. However, they never will. Time skip. Jiraiya had offered Naruto the contract, which he did not hesitate to sign. However, his goal was to remain on Gamabunta's head for the entire day, which he successfully did. As Jiraiya believed that the kid had just been through something difficult and he needed more time, as he spoke to Hiruzen on Naruto's behalf on this matter. The finals finally came around, as Naruto match was against Neji. He played it perfectly like they did, as Naruto came out on top, seemingly putting in a lot of effort, but in reality, he was holding back. Yes, he was. As the rest of the matches took place, Sasuke faced off against Gaara. However, something was different. Gaara was not the same. Flashback. He stood on the roof, simply gazing out. He was within Konoha. That is when he heard movement behind him. He turned as his sand shot out and slammed the person into the wall. Easy, said Naruto, taking the hit like it was nothing. It's just me. You. Why are you here? You seem to be struggling a lot after our conversation. You put thoughts in my head, said Gaara. Thoughts that have never concerned me before. Why now? Because we're similar, said Naruto. Look into my eyes, and you can see that we are. You don't feel fear when looking into my eyes, because you understand them, do you not? As Naruto looked at him, the both of us are a hurt soul that needs help to return back to a stable self. And I can be the one to return you back to a stable self, Gaara. There's a lot that's about to happen, and for this, I can help you, Naruto said. You only need to listen to me. That voice in your head, that voice that demands that you kill and be alone. It's a problem. Because you're not alone. You have your siblings. They love you. They cherish you. You don't have to be alone anymore. I know it has been hard. Everything that you have done, everything that has happened to you. But let me be the one to guide you back in the light. Let me be the one to lend you a helping hand. As Gaara found himself unable to speak for the first time, looking at someone that was just like him. However, suddenly, the voice in his head started to scream. Immediately though, the sand became soggy as Naruto burst through it. Naruto landed as he placed his hand on Gaara's forehead, his fingertips burning with chakra. And it happened. End of flashback. Gaara seemed more relaxed. There was no longer the line under his eyes, because for the first time, he was able to actually sleep. The match did not turn out as it would have done, as Gaara attacks were not going for the kill. Sasuke, on the other hand, he had something to prove. He had trained hard for this, as Sasuke tried to go for the kill. However, Gaara blocked his final Chidori with a sand cocoon before emerging through the back. As Gaara spoke to him, I don't wish to end your life, Uchiha. Even Sasuke was confused. He was different, as Sasuke didn't understand the drastic change. That is when it happened. feathers started to fall. Hiruzen jumped towards the other roof when the box exploded in smoke. That is when the Kazekage jumped over. Orochimaru, Hiruzen said. Orochimaru blinked under his veil as he ripped it off, revealing the face of a woman. He tore that off as well, revealing his face. How did you know? He said, looking at Hiruzen. As Hiruzen was sealed inside, he wanted this. He knew that something like this might happen, but he wanted it. As the Sound Force came to lock him in there, as Hiruzen gazed down towards the village. I'm afraid that you've lost. The San wasn't as gullible as you thought. That is when Orochimaru saw the Sand Ninjas fighting against the Sound Ninjas. They were now joined inside. Even Gaara started to use his sand to crush the Sound Ninjas. Orochimaru snarled, but he was still going through with his plan. Naruto did not show his face at all, as Kakashi wondered where the hell he was. Naruto was on the opposite roof, as he stood there until he could no longer feel Hiruzen Talker. As he released a breath, it was a necessary sacrifice, as the death of Hiruzen did not shake him in the slightest. It just goes to show how truly desensitized he was to people that he cared about dying. With the death of Hiruzen and Orochimaru having his arms sealed away, he ran. Orochimaru was running with the Sound Force as he looked up. Once again, he saw the Jinchuriki looking down towards him, but he didn't have time to think about that. Baki had came to Hiruzen after secretly speaking to the member of the council, telling them that they were being set up, and they played their part well. With the combined forces, the death toll wasn't as much. Hiruzen Saratobi passed though. Time skip. Jiraiya took Naruto with him on the road to find the next Hokage. For this one, Naruto had to put in more effort, as he faced off against Kisame and Itachi. That was not the effort. Seeing Tsunade, as at first she denied him, until she found out about the Rasengan when they fought. Naruto could not help it much. The cold dead look in his eyes, it affected him ever since. He couldn't help it much. They made a deal for 1 week. At the end of the week, they came across Orochimaru. Kabuto, believing that he was more than Naruto when they fought. However, Naruto knew that he had to play along, as he couldn't afford to do anything stupid at all. Tsunade was able to regain her hope after witnessing his near death, as Kabuto was able to nick his heart, as Naruto had to play his part, despite even risking his life. However, he's done worse in his time. She was able to get over her fear of blood as she jumped in to save him, making sure that he did not die. With that done, she turned her wrath on the sannin, and thus she was brought back to the village and became the 5th Hokage of the village. Everything seemed to just be passing by quickly, as we find Naruto seated within his apartment. He was standing in the mirror, gazing on his reflection. It's time that he truly begins. Konoha was already dealt with. Everything will be alright. It's time that the world finally saw him as a monster. It was needed though. There was nothing that he could do about it, as he started to recite their name in his head. Sorry, Bachan. Sorry, perverted sage. Sorry, Gaara. The words came out soft and easy, as his eyes fixated on his own reflection. It's time, he thought to himself. It was a peaceful day within the village, as they had a new Hokage. Things were looking up. Boom! A giant explosion rocked the entire village. Surprisingly, the blast went upwards instead of expanding to the sides. Everyone was alerted. Snather Senju did not hesitate to leave her office, her envoys flanking behind her. As she found herself running towards the location, arriving there, she was confused on what was going on and what happened here. That is when Kakashi arrived on the scene, a mortified look reflecting in that one eye of his, as she could see his hand shaking in shock and disbelief. "What is it? What's wrong?" Naruto," Kakashi said, causing her eyes to widen in shock. Time skip. Orochimaru was more pissed off. As Tsunade, that part of his plan failed, and here he was in bed. His arms was a constant throbbing pain. Soon he will have to take another body, unless he got the Uchiha's body in time. The Sound Four was busy in the village at the moment. Yes, they were hiding, preparing for the right moment to strike. Orochimaru snapped his head towards his door. It had to be Kabuto, he thought to himself. As the door opened up, the sannin was shocked. Absolutely so. Standing there at the door was none other than the Jinchuriki, as Naruto stepped inside, rather nonchalant. "Hey, we really should talk," he said. But guys, be in subscribe right here. If you want to see the next person do, like, subscribe, comment down below, and turn on that bell notification to stay posted. Remember, share to all of your friends in your social media platform. But I'm off for now. See you guys soon. Peace.